So I'm going to get started with 2.6. We're going to be talking about strings. We've talked about strings briefly as a data type, but we want to discuss it a little bit more. It says strings in Java are objects of the string class. One of the important things to notice is that string is capitalized, right? When we declared ints, right, and other primitive data types, we were looking at a different set, whereas a string in Java is actually an object from the string class. And it can hold characters, a sequence of characters. And it's typically also in quotation marks, double quotation marks. Remember that a class or classification in Java defines the data that all objects of the class have, the fields and the behaviors, the methods, everything that's inside of it. Okay, it says you can declare a variable to be of type string. And we've done that. We've already created strings, but we've also talked about the primitive types, int, double, Boolean. Can't remember if we've talked about others. But those being with the lowercase, and it just basically repeated what I just said, string is capitalized. One common instance that we've seen string is in public static void main, the main method. And we're passing, look at this, think of main as a method, and we're passing it string, and you'll eventually come to find out that this is an array. Okay, so of string type, and then different arguments you're sending in here. But before we even talk about that, we're going to look inside the main method. We're going to create a string, and inside of it put null. We're not going to put a value. Talked about null already, and how null is nothing. Okay, it's just setting it, creating the greeting variable, declaring it as type string, and then assigning it null, and then printing out what the greeting was. If you print it out, it just prints out null. If I were to change that up and say greeting and just say hello inside quotation marks, it would print out hello. Okay, but we're going to assign it back to what originally was, null with no quotation marks. Okay, null just means nothing. The code above declares an object variable named greeting and sets the value of greeting to the Java keyword null to show that it doesn't refer to any object yet. We haven't assigned it anything. So when we actually print it out, we print out the greeting, it printed out null. And if we change null to another string, another collection of characters, we're able to print that out as well, just like we print out hello. Okay, it says object variables refer to objects in memory. Okay, we're looking for that object specifically in memory. A reference is a way to find the actual object. Like adding a contact to your phone lets you reach someone without actually knowing where they are. If we had to identify the location of every single person every time we called them, that would be a problem. That's why our phone does it for us. The value of greeting is null since the string object has not been created yet. So we've allocated this portion in memory called greeting, but we haven't assigned it a value yet. Okay, the initial value is null. Okay, it says in Java there are two ways to create an object of the string class. You can use the new keyword just as if you're creating a new object from the class string. You can do that, or you can do it the way that we just did it by actually writing string, the variable name, and then what's actually inside that variable. Okay, by using new, the new keyword followed by a space and then the class constructor, we've done this before, but this initializes the fields of the object. This is a standard way to create a new object, but there's a simpler way that requires less code by using just the string and the variable name. It says in Java, you can also use just a string literal. Okay, so this is called a string literal, which is a set of characters enclosed in double quotation marks. I always like typing the least amount of code as possible, trying to find efficient ways. sometimes I'll teach you the roundabout way, and I might try and find a way that might not make sense to someone that's programmed for a while, or someone's looking at this that's a full-time professional in their field, but I'll teach it to you in one way and then teach you a shortcut so you appreciate it later. Okay, it says in both cases, an object of the string class will be created. So by writing either of these lines of code, it accomplishes the same thing. And typically, from writing code long enough, you become very standard in your way of writing code and different mannerisms that you use. So it becomes more and more easier to spot when someone is not writing their own code, just due to little mannerisms that they're using or what they've used in the past. The same way it's common to spot plagiarism in papers. If someone's writing these like poor papers and then all of a sudden writes this like excellent, like doesn't sound anything like their writing language, that's a problem. I like reading books and reading articles of people that I know that I've heard and listened to before, because I can hear their voice as I'm reading the article. And there's times where I'm reading that article where I'm like, oh yeah, that person would definitely say that. But there's times I'm reading the article and be like, that's definitely been changed around. There's one book I remember I read when I was in high school. It was from a politician. He had wrote this book, and a pretty popular person. And I could hear him speak every single word throughout the book just because I had heard him and listened to him enough that I could sense that. In the same way that when you write your code, you start to develop different patterns and different things and different ways that you would write it. And if you're able to find shortcuts to writing different lines, then some people take those shortcuts. Some people are just so stuck in their old way that they just like doing things their way. That's perfectly fine, but we're going to teach you multiple ways to do the same thing so you can pick up on what you like. Okay, it says here's an active code example that creates two greeting strings. One's using a string literal and the other's using the new and the string constructor. Okay, it says change the code to add two new strings called first name and last name, one using a string literal and the other using new and then printing out. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll create a string called first name, and I'll assign that. I'll just use Bob as an example. First name, Bob. And then we'll create the last name, okay, using the new, creating our object. And I'm just going to say Smith. I actually went to high school with a guy named Bobby Smith. Okay, I'm just going to copy these two lines of code because why not? And instead of greeting one, I'm going to say first name. Instead of greeting two, I'm going to say last name. And I'm going to print it out. And by doing so, if you look up here as well, I was able to create it using a string literal here. And by using new and creating a new object this way, did the same thing down here with this example. Printing them both out. Hello, welcome, and then print first name, last name. Okay, so it says, now that greeting refers to an actual object. We can ask the object what class created it. Try the following. What does it print? Okay, so I went ahead and ran it. And there's the get class method. You see this? Greeting.getClass. And then also we had our parent class .getSuperClass. And it showed us that we're using the java.lang string class, and then also using the java.lang object class. All right, so just to recap this, we created a string literal greeting saying hello in the main method. And then we created an object to the current class of the greeting and said .get class. Okay, so the cur class, and we printed that out. And we were able to notice that it was from the string just by creating that string literal. And then by using that same exact, by creating from the parent class and looking at the get super class method, we're able to print that out. And it showed that it's an actual object. All right. And then explaining the code above a little bit more. Okay, it goes through and talks about java.lang.string. A lot of this is not something that's super important right this second, but we want to talk about the java.lang part. Okay, that's the package name. And we're not going to talk about packages much, talk about the parent class or superclass. We're not going to dive too much into this, but the way that we're organizing our classes are in things called packages. Okay, and we created a package. Okay, so it says the java.lang part of the package name. Every class in the Java language is in a package. Okay, so when we're importing different classes or importing different packages, we're able to pull from what's inside of that. And a package is really just a collection of classes. Okay, and then we're using java.lang package, and inside the java.lang package is the string class. So the dot separators are kind of like the pathway of like your address. If you live on 123 Burns Crossing Road, you then have your location Severn, and then you have your state Maryland and your zip code. This is just the location. It's in the java.lang package, and inside of there is the string class. Okay, and you can have a parent class. We'll talk more about that later. Like I said, this is just introducing it. This is not diving too deep into it. You can inherit different properties the same way we've talked about methods inheriting properties as you create instances of different objects. Okay, we're able to inherit different instance variables. You can also inherit properties from other classes from a parent class. It says just like you might be able to inherit music ability from a parent. Okay, inheritance is a big one of the main topics in the Java programming language or any object-oriented programming language. Inheritance as well as polymorphism. We'll talk more about that later. This is just barely scratching the surface, just saying, hey, look, this is what this means. We're not going to dive too far into it. Okay, so you have a superclass, the parent, that then you're able to inherit from. Okay, and a brief diagram. I'm not going to get too far into this because, like I said, it's just barely introducing this. It's going to talk more about it in a later lesson. All right, not the meat of this lesson. I want to get back into the meat. It says string operators and concatenation. Okay, strings can be added together. We've done this before already by using the plus symbol. Okay, it says strings can be appended or added onto each other to create a new string using the plus or plus equals operator. This is called concatenation. Okay, keyword, you'll see concatenation a lot in your programming career. There's easier ways, and people have always tried to find better ways of combining strings. But one of the biggest problems, I'm sure we'll mention this I'm guessing in this lesson at some point, strings are immutable in the Java programming language. So you can't just create a string and then section off a piece of it. You have to use a string builder or a different class in order to do that. Okay, you can't use the string. Once you create a string and you assign a value, it is immutable, meaning it cannot change. You would have to create a whole new string if you wanted to do some sort of edit with that string. So it says try the following code. Add another variable for last name that is Hernandez. Use plus equals or plus. Yes, sir. Yeah, you may. It says to add the last name variable after the result, use plus equals or plus to add 2 or more exclamation points to the end happy birthday. All right, so I will tackle this one step at a time. Add another variable called last name. So I'll say string last name is equal to Hernandez. All right, I have first name. So far I have string start happy birthday, name Jose, last name Hernandez. And then it wants me to print that out. So print the result. The result is plus equals, so start happy birthday, name, and then plus last name. I'll add a space in between there. So I'll say that. And then after the last name, it says to add 2 or more exclamation points. So I'll add 3, 1, 2, 3. Oh, I guess I have like another result plus equals this on the end. All right, so I'll take that out. So we'll say happy birthday, space, Jose, space, Hernandez. And then at the very end of the result, I'll add on a couple more exclamation points. All right, let's see if I did what it wanted. So it prints out happy birthday, Jose Hernandez. Okay, it says note that spaces are not added. See how I had to add specifically spaces in between happy birthday, space, Jose, space. Okay. If you don't add spaces, everything's going to be added together. And we'll say hi, Jose as one rather than hi, space, Jose. Okay. It also says, remember, variables are put outside quotation marks. See that? How the quotation marks are here, the variable names are outside the quotation marks. Right. Given the following code segment, what is the string referenced by S1? Okay. So we start off, string 1 is XY. Okay. String 2, S2, is assigned as XY. So if I say S1, which is XY, plus XY plus Z, it should read all one word, XY, XYZ. So not A, it's going to be B. There's no spaces, so it wouldn't be C. And it's doubled, so it wouldn't be D. Let's check it. It's correct. All right. It says you can even add other items to a string by using the plus operator. Okay, the other item will be converted to a string using .toString. Okay. All objects inherit a .toString method. So if you want to change an int to string, you can do that. It says, what do you think the following will print? Guess before you hit run. Okay, so we're taking a string and then says plus 4 plus 3. Okay, so these are integers. What will happen if we run it? It fails, right? Because what it does is it adds 4 plus 3 together. Instead of concatenating it, it adds 4 plus 3 and gives you 7. Rather than actually printing 4 and 3, right? It gives you 1, 2, 7. We expected it to print out 12, 4, 3, 1, 2, 4, 3, but it did not. What's that? I'm sorry. I'm speaking backwards here. Actually, so we expected it. We wanted it to print out 1, 2, 7. Okay. And it actually prints out 1, 2, 4, 3. I'm sorry. So there has to be some sort of operation that's done ahead of that. So it says, guess before you run. If you want the addition to take place before the numbers are turned into a string, what should you do? Try to modify the code so it adds up 4 plus 3 before appending the value to the string. Okay, so hint, since we just, well, it says you use this to do addition before multiplication in arithmetic expressions. Since we just went through and create a few strings and combine them, okay, you could do that operation and create a whole nother string on the outside here and put them together. And you could create a string and add the 2 strings together. But what we want it to do is we want it to actually perform this operation of 4 plus 3. Okay. So one thing that could be done, if we're looking here, right, it says, if you are appending a number to a string, it will be converted to a string first before being appended. Okay. Since the same operators are processed from left to right, this will print out 1, 2, 4, 3. first 4 will be turned into a string and then appended to 12, and then 3 will be turned into a string and appended to 1, 2, 4. If you want to do addition instead, try using parentheses. Think about the order of operation, okay? So if I were to go through and wrote parentheses around 4 plus 3, it performs this operation first, 4 plus 3, gives me a 7, and then appends that to the string 12, okay? So I now have 1, 2, 7. I was thinking ahead of what they actually wanted ahead of time and mixed that up briefly there. Okay, so it says, what if you wanted to print out a double quote character? What if you wanted to print out a double quote character? And since the double quote is a special character in Java, we have to put a backslash in front of it. Okay, there's a bunch of escape sequences that we can go through that use the backslash, including creating a new line. That's frequently used when we're first starting off programming. We'll use \n, but there are other backslash escape sequences that allow us to use different characters. For example, here it says here is a backslash quote, and they put the backslash right before it, and that declares, basically it's telling the computer, hey, look, I'm about to enter a character. Don't confuse this. Okay, don't think that this is a special character in Java. Okay, it says, and if you wanted to print a backslash, you have to put backslash. Oh, you good? No, you're good. You're good. Is that something that felt like, is that a piece that fell on the ground right there? What is that? The little, oh no, it's right there underneath. Take a look. Yeah, that. Yeah, what is that? Oh, never mind. I didn't know that was like a piece of your keyboard or something that fell off.
I'm gonna test my battery life on this thing.
Yeah.
Battery's 43%.
No worries. All right, so it says down here, if we're looking back at this, it says here is a backslash quote. Okay, and a backslash. If I run it, this is what actually prints out here. Here is a backslash quote. See how they use the quotation mark there, right? And then we ended. Then we concatenated that with and a backslash. And then backslash n actually prints out a new line. So every single time you see backslash n, that's just skipping a line for you. Sometimes that's used just for aesthetics, just making something skip down the next line look nice. Okay, so it says backslash n, and then it skipped to the next line, prints out a new line. All right, our programming challenge says Mad Libs. If you've ever played Mad Libs, in this game, you first choose a bunch of words without looking at the story, and then those words are filled into the story and make it sound wacky. Fill in the variables below with strings for each word, and then run to see the story. Then, working in pairs, come up with another story of at least 5 new string variables. All right, so a plural noun, I'll just say dogs. A color, I'll say blue. Second color, I'll say yellow. A food, what's that? Yeah, need semicolons, correct. A food, what did my wife say we're doing for dinner tonight? I'll just say tacos. And plural noun, plural noun 2, we'll say birds. We just bought a bird feeder over the weekend, 2 of them. We attach them to our window. It's when they like fly up. My son like loves birds right now. He's 1. Okay. So if I run it, so roses are blue, dogs are yellow. I like tacos. Do birds like them too? All right. That made no sense. Right. So, you're concatenating all these strings. I think the main point that's pointing out is by using the plus symbol, we're able to concatenate strings. It challenged and said, create your own with 5 new strings and new variables. That's up to you. Now come up with your own silly poem. Okay, you can type out whatever you want. Maybe we'll go ahead and just do it. Copy all this. I'll save time. If you guys want to go through and do that, you can. All right, summary. We talked briefly about the strings. Okay, we've haven't really dived fully into strings and talked about how they're used in computer science, but we have at least had an introductory now on strings compared to what we've already talked about. It says a string object can be created by using the literal method or by using a constructor. Okay, we've already talked about new before. We've already talked about null. Concatenation is a newer concept by using the plus or the plus equals operator. Primitive types can be concatenated with a string type, just as we concatenated the value 7, 4 plus 3 with 12. Okay, and escape characters or escape sequences by using the backslash. All right, this has to be entered inside of the quotation marks. You can't enter these outside the quotation marks, or else you get a problem with your code. Okay, so it says completed, well done. If you want to go back and write your own silly poem, you can, but just to save time, I'm just going to go through that. And that is 2.6 strings.